Hey, what's up guys, Sir Emanon here, and welcome to another video. So this is going to be the highly anticipated Tri-Brigade Lyrilusc deck profile that will of course be legal once Synchro does drop this upcoming Friday. And I'm super excited for this one. This is a deck that I've been playtesting extensively, and if you guys haven't seen the matches that I've been uploading to the channel recently, you can go ahead and click the card in the top right corner of the screen, which will take you to those videos. But yeah, this is a super explosive combo deck, really fun to play. Honestly, the most fun I've had in a while. Pretty much since Lunalight, to be honest, and that's a bit of a throwback to the OG viewers on my channel. But yeah, super high ceiling, very fun to play, and I think it'll make a super strong resurgence into the metagame once the post Burst of Destiny and Synchro metagame solidifies in the upcoming weeks here. So this is a deck definitely keep your eye out on, even if you don't plan on picking it up yourself. This deck I think will be quite popular, and it definitely is very formidable. So yeah, I also am currently working on a combo tutorial video. You guys know how I get with the detailed nature of those videos. They tend to be at least an hour long in length. So if you want me to kind of hurry up on that and work in it as quickly as possible, definitely feel free to let me know. Leave 150 likes in the video and I'll get out to you guys by the weekend. Otherwise, I'll just kind of be working on it until I'll get out to you guys next week. But yeah, I'm going to be, of course, just kind of going over the card choices, the reasoning behind certain ratios and inclusions, as well as just detailed theory, just overall. So let's get started without any further ado. So first up is the Lyrilusc portion. So we have 3 copies of Turquoise Warbler, 2 Barrel Canary, 2 Cobalt Sparrow, 2 Celeste Wagtail, and 1 Sapphire Swallow. So this is a ratio that I decided on after a lot of just kind of messing around and seeing A, what the OCG does, because there's a lot of diverse kind of just build paths there, and B, just playing the deck, just seeing what feels good, what I saw in terms of just optimal hands as well as suboptimal hands and things of that nature. Also, before I get too far into it, I'm just kind of operating under the assumption that you guys know what all the cards do. So if not, feel free to go ahead and pause the video and read the cards in case you're new to the deck or haven't read the new cards yet. But yeah, I think this is the ratio that I've kind of found to be the most suitable. I've seen OCG lists that play a high concentration of Lyrilusc names just to see the most amount of them possible. Which I think works better in a pure build, but maybe not so much in this one because your hands can get a little bit clunky with the Tri-Brigade names. I've also seen some OCG lists minimize on them and just cut down the package as much as possible, but I think that kind of hinders your grind game. So I've struck a balance and I've tried to find a way somewhere in the middle here, and this is what I've been satisfied with so far. Also keep in mind that this is by no means a refined list. You can feel free to leave suggestions. I welcome any feedback as usual if you have any criticisms or ways to improve the deck as usual. But doing my preliminary testing, this has been what I found to be the most effective. So I guess I'll run through the reasons why. So first up is 3 copies of Turquoise Warbler. She has always been the best extender, or best enabler rather, of the deck. Really not much to say about her because she's the one that works independently by just getting you a body on the board, and then she works in tandem with pretty much any of your Lyrilusc names. Obviously, she's ideal to open with Cobalt Sparrow and the Celeste Wagtail in particular, but even if you open her with just the Barrel Canary and the Sapphire Swallow, and those are the only 2 cards you have to work with, it's fine because you can get to Recital Starling at minimum without normal summoning, which gets you to Nerval, and then you can go Farid and keep comboing from there. It's not the most potent way to combo, but it definitely makes it so that you still have to play. So she works super well, ideally with Fractal plus Bird Call, Tanky by extension, and Foolish Barrow with the combination of these 2. So that is 3, 6, 10, 12 cards, and 1 for 1. So 13 cards that work really well with her. And then by extension, you can still make plays work even if you draw her with Nerval or Barrel Canary or Sapphire Swallow. So she works with almost anything in the deck. That's a combo piece. And that's what makes her the card you really want to just be consistently opening. And the fact that we have Bird Call now makes it so that you have an additional way to trigger her effect because she triggers one special from the hand, so you can't get her effect when she's 1 for 1. But now in combination with Bird Call, even if you don't open her right away, you can still get access to her later with something like a Cobalt Sparrow search or a Recital Starling search, and then actually get her out from your hand via the Bird Call to get an extra 2 bodies on board. So this is kind of reminiscent of using her with Farid, which still does come up, but now you have more avenues to get just those additional just extenders on the board, which is super great. And I'll talk a bit more about Bird Call and why this card is way more than just a Rhoda, a consistency tool. But yeah, this is one of the reasons why that is that getting the extra ways to proc your Lyrilusc name effects is super valuable. But yeah, she's like probably the best Lyrilusc in the, oh, she's by far the best Lyrilusc in the deck, main deck that is. So you really want to max out on her. I haven't seen really any lists that cut down this card, and I don't really anticipate any reason why you would cut down this card. Next up is the 2 copies of Barrel Canary. So she is kind of similar to Turquoise Warbler, but a little bit more limiting. So you do already need graveyard setup for her to be good. But that being said, that's really easy to accomplish. Pretty much if you open her with either like your Bird Call or like Fractal or even Cobalt Sparrow and or Wagtail, and you just normal summon them to get them into grade with like Almiraj or Linkuriboh if you play it. It just turns on her effect right away. Its most limiting effect, of course, is the fact that she Xyz locks you, so you have to be a bit careful when managing her in tandem with your Tri-Brigades. But that being said, that's not really too difficult to manage if you open up your other Lyriluscs first and then you search her later on. But she's also not bad to open in your best case scenario hands, being like Warbler Sparrow, Warbler Wagtail, Warbler Fractal, etc. Because if you do get hand trapped and just have the surplus name in hand, that allows you to just kind of play through hand traps. Kind of a similar philosophy with like why maxing out Nerval here. But yeah, she's really, really good. A lot of players in the OCG are playing 1 copy of this card, which is understandable because it's not the one you want to, of course, be leading with a lot of the time. But I find that the second one is pretty useful when you find yourself in grind game scenarios and want to actually just push for the extra Xyz. Maybe you want to make a Zeus turn 3 or just push your game with Assembled Nightingale. Stuff like that definitely does come up, so I do recommend playing the second copy. The first one helps you end on things like Ensemblue Robin, and then you can just search the follow-up one, maybe off like Cobalt into this card on the end phase Simorg effect, for example, or you just have like a spare Bird Call, which can happen in certain combos. So this card, super, super valuable. Also has a nice hidden effect where you actually can play around Triple Tactics Talent with your Xyz monsters, or your Win Xyz monsters. So that is something definitely to keep in mind as well. Next up is the 2 Cobalt Sparrow and 2 Celeste Wagtail. These are very, very similar cards. So they're both kind of additional extenders where if you are able to proc their effects, they get you additional pluses. They don't work identically, of course, because adding a monster versus a spell or trap is very, very different, especially considering the utility of Bird Call. But that being said, you don't want to like open up duplicates of these, and you don't want to open combinations of these. Like for example, you don't want to open up a Sparrow with Wagtail, or like 2 of either of them, and you have a lot of ways to really access these if needed. You have the 3 Fractal, you have the Tenki, you have the 1-for-1, and you have the Foolish Burial. So I really thought that just cutting these to 2 was fine because there's a lot of access, and also there's Bird Call too. That's like the more obvious reason. But yeah, like they work super, super well with either the Turquoise Warbler or the Barrel Canary. But now, like even if you open them with Fractal, it's not horrible. Previously, if you open them with Fractal, you could combo just as long as you had a spare Tri-Beast to discard off like Karas, which you would search later. But now you don't even need to do that because of the existence of Barrel Canary, since you can simply just go into a Farid to special this out of your hand, which gets you to Barrel Canary either directly via the Cobalt Sparrow or indirectly with a Wagtail searching out Bird Call and then going to Barrel Canary that way. And then this allows you to go into things like Simorg plus your Ensemble Robin if you have like insulation against maybe a Nibiru via like Crossout, for example. So that's like a cool way to make use of this, just like a small 2-card combo without having to rely on just opening up a lot of engine cards. So that's like kind of nice utility. I will say that the targeting protection of Cobalt Sparrow comes up a fair amount because people are playing Impermanent Veiler a lot currently this format. So you definitely want to keep that in mind, that if you are trying to make sure that your searches resolve early with your Recital Starlings, you do want to be prioritizing this card. But Celeste Wagtail also is a very, very explosive enabler. There's actually a combo with Warbler plus Wagtail that ends you on a bigger board than the Warbler plus Cobalt Sparrow opening, but it does make it so that you play a little bit harder into certain hand traps for the aforementioned reason and the fact that you kind of vomit everything onto the board earlier. But yeah, these cards are, again, quite similar. I think the biggest distinction is when you open Bird Call. So like, opening Bird Call plus Sparrow is still good because you get to Warbler, but opening Bird Call plus Wagtail is a little bit more awkward because, obviously Warbler into Wagtail, getting you an additional copy of Bird Call is nice for follow-up, but it doesn't actually get you into the extender the traditional way that you would if you were to just hard open the Warbler plus the Wagtail. So it's like minor distinctions like that that make this a little bit important to just know how to manage innately. And that's something that kind of just you need to pick up on as you play the deck more. I'm still working on it myself, but it's like these minute interactions that I really enjoy about the deck for sure. Additionally, the last thing I want to mention with these is the Wagtail Graveyard effect. So primarily you see people using this to buff their Ensemblue Robin to get an additional bounce, which definitely is important. And it's the one you want to be commonly detaching just to make sure you get repeated use out of it. But this also has a neat utility benefit where you can actually make use out of your Xyz that have gone to the graveyard. So like, let's say that you went for a Zeus play, like with your assembled Nightingale, and they somehow had a way to out it. Like maybe, they had like a non-targeting way to remove it from the field and send it to your graveyard. Well, if you're able to bring it back later on with something like either a Barrow Canary or your Turquoise Warbler, you can actually just attach this freely under your assembled Nightingale, and it gets you an extra material to like maybe go into Zeus afterwards. So stuff like that comes up. Similarly with like, Recital Starlings that are lingering in your graveyard, you can bring them back with your Warbler or your Barrow Canary, and then attach the Wagtail underneath these, and then get more searches that way. And then like you can potentially even go into like Utopic Draco Future off of that. So there's a lot of cute interactions with this card, allowing you to just get you bonus effects from I guess expended Xyz monsters, if that makes sense. So that is super, super valuable for sure. So you can get a lot of unexpected utility out of this card, which is super nice. Next up is the one copy of Sapphire Swallow. So a lot of builds are playing more than one of this, but I really, really dislike opening this card for the simple fact that she requires a higher investment than any of the other Lyriluscs to combo. So she requires you to have both a name in your hand and a winged beast on your field. And while that's not too hard to accomplish once you already start comboing, if you open with her, it's a little bit harder to get into that position in the first place, because she takes the spot of what could be a better combo enabler. So like if there's a lot of times like you open Warbler plus Swallow, and it's like, man, if this was literally any of the other Lyrilusc names, we'd be in business. But she still is a very, very strong extender if she does manage to resolve, which is great. One of the frustrating things is that there are times where like you do need to keep like your Recital Starlings up to be able to just keep her alive for her condition, and that plays harder into Nibiru if you can't like directly go into Utopic Draco Futures. That is something to watch out for. But that being said, she's important, of course, for her extension as well as her ability to give your Lyriluscs more material, which is important with your Ensemblue Robin, but also with the fact that you can do a cool play where with Recital Starling's first effect, you can go Chilling 1 Recital Starling to boost a monster, and then Chilling to apply the effect of Sapphire Swallow to attach from grave. So it gives your monsters a 900 attack boost instead of a 300 attack or 600 attack one. Which definitely is valuable if you are trying to pump up an Assembled Nightingale to attack for game, because 300 more damage per attack adds up very fast if that's like 3-4 attacks, for example. So yeah, this card, of course, is necessary at least one for sure. I really wouldn't recommend playing more than one. You can definitely test it out, but I just find that it contributes to your bad hands a fair amount. And it's true that like you can apply the similar philosophy that I said about Barrow Canary, where if you get hand trapped on something like a Cobalt Spirit Search and you already have her in hand, it's valuable there. But because you can search in whatever order you like, you can simply just play more of the card you'd rather just see by itself, being Nerval or the Barrow Canary. And I feel like on kind of the totem pole of cards I want to see, this ranks towards the bottom in a lot of cases. This is a card I always want to be searching and not hard drawing, which is why I'm playing it at 1. So that is it for the Lyrilusc names. Next up is going to be the Tri-Brigade portion. So we have a lineup here of 3 Fractal, 3 Nerval, 1 Kit, and 1 Karas. So going back to OCG lists in theory for a second here, most players are either playing this ratio or they're just playing like a really small Tri-Brigade package. And I think that could be valid as well if you want to make the deck more Lyrilusc forward. I just think that the Fractal is pretty much a way into your Lyrilusc Engine without having to actually draw too many like duplicate names that don't work well with each other, right? So again, like you run into the problem sometimes where if you just try max out on these, you just draw the incorrect combinations that don't actually facilitate a combo. Like what happens if you draw Barrow Canary plus Sapphire Swallow? That doesn't do a whole ton. Same with like Sparrow and Celeste Wagtail, like I mentioned before. So Fractal allows you to just kind of get you more ways into these Lyrilusc names that you're trying to access anyways, while at the same time just being a Tri-Brigade name that works very, very independently by itself. This is the only 1-card combo the deck has. And that 1-card combo actually not only gets you into, of course, the Simorgh Barrier Statue protected by Rendezvous, but that setup by itself, if your opponent doesn't have a way to stop you, literally OTKs the next turn. And it's like a really, really cool mechanism that I want to show off in that combo video. But yeah, this is like super solid, of course, to have. Of course, it just enables your Warbler, even your Barrel Canary a lot better. So pretty straightforward. Nerval is one that I've thought about dropping down to 2. I tested it at 2 for a little bit, but I realized that opening it is actually not too bad for the reasons that I've kind of been mentioning over and over again, where it's like, if you get Veiled or Impermed on like your Cobalt Sparrow search, you really do want to just have like the additional name just so you can be ahead by one search, so to speak. Additionally, it actually works fine with Turquoise Warbler because there's a cool play you can do where you special Warbler, even if you have no other Lyriluscs, you normal summon Nerval, you go Recital, you detach the Nerval, and then you search Barrel Canary off the Recital, and then off the Nerval, you grab the Fractal, which allows you to pitch to send either Sparrow or Wagtail, which turns on your Barrel Canary. So these two actually now facilitate a pretty good combo without just going like special summon, normal summon, go into Farigit, and then like, Nerval searches you. That is an option you can still do, depending on the line you want to take, because again, Barrel Canary Xyz locking you does kind of suck, but it's nice to have that additional option available. And there's like so many different routes you can take with these cards that it's very flexible, and I do enjoy that quite a bit. But yeah, Nerval, of course, it's like super synergistic with the deck, just as Fractal is. So maxing out on this, I think, makes a lot of sense. Next up is the one copy of Kit and the one copy of Chaos. You don't really want to be opening either of these cards, to be quite honest, but these are definitely necessary to run in the deck for sure. Kit, obviously, to be able to send Rendezvous, because we are playing the Barrier Statue package, as you can see, and then Keras as a way to extend, just in case you open like a Tri-Brigade heavy hand, or if you just really want to try and push going second. This allows you to make that extra push. So like, of course, in like standard Tri-Brigade, you have 2 plays most of the time. It's your normal summon of a Tri-Brigade or your special summon of a Keras. Here, it's like you have your Lyrilusc Engine to just back all of it up, and then you have like your normal summon of a Tri-Brigade and then a special summon of a Keras, worst case scenario. So this, of course, is a card that's pretty easy to get to. Not needed in a lot of the combos for sure, but it can definitely come up in certain scenarios if you do want to play some of like the Oath combos. As you can see, I'm not playing Oath in my build, but I'll kind of talk about that a bit later. But yeah, I think this is a pretty solid Tri-Brigade lineup here. Next up is the Barrier Statue and then the Rendezvous. I think Barrier Statue, while it is bad against Flunderies, you still have to play it because by itself, like if you open just a Fractal or if you get hand trapped, like on say like your Lyrilusc plays, and then you have to fall back in your Tri-Brigades, this puts in a lot more work than something like an Apex Avian, usually in game 1. Like Avian could be good if you like open hand traps. You're not always guaranteed to see these, even though you play a fair number of them. It's nice to just have a card that can be so threatening by itself and can have so much like just presence on your opponent. So I think this is fine. Also, it's better to like draw if you do have to draw it, because there are times where sometimes normal summoning gets there, especially if you like for some reason have Sapphire Swallow and can like try and play a little bit. But yeah, Rendezvous there to protect it. I think I didn't want to play this card, but I found that you just need it in certain cases. So yeah, that's pretty much wraps up the Tri-Brigade part of it. So next up, I want to talk a lot about Bird Call, just like this card by itself. So this card, I'll just read it in full. It says, add to your hand or send to the graveyard 1 Lyrilusc monster from your deck, and then you can special summon 1 Lyrilusc monster with a different name from your hand. You can only activate 1 Lyrilusc Bird Call per turn. So this card is absurd. There's like no other way to sugarcoat it. This card is crazy. So this allows you not only to access any of your Lyriluscs, but allows you to special your surplus names out of your hand, and that turns on 3 of your names, being Warbler, Sparrow, or Wagtail. Warbler coming up a lot in the mid game, which is really good. And in certain hands, like you can turn on your Sparrow, which is great. Obviously, just specialing Wagtail off of this is super great because we're not playing Bird Sanctuary, which I'll get to in a little bit here. But yeah, this card allows you, it just offers so much flexibility. And the cool thing about this card is that this deck has a really big weakness to Droll and Lockbird, as you could probably expect with all the searching. But this Foolish is as well. So that's really just absurd. Like they gave it a Foolish effect too. So it works nicely if you have to work around Droll, like maybe you search this like later into your combo, like you open Warbler plus Wagtail, and then like you search this, they Droll you, like maybe you opened a Barrel Canary already, and you can go, great, all right, we can like Bird Call send like something, and then we can just bring it back off the Barrel Canary, and then at least make something happen. So that's cool. Like if you open this card, like you can send it to play around Droll games 2 and 3. That way you can like get your actual valuable searches off, which is great. So yeah, super great card. And it's important to like manage this card in the best way that you can, because you want to get more value off of it. Obviously, early on, like, if you special out Warbler and it's turn 1 and you can special Warbler with its own effect anyways, that's not really getting too much extra mileage out of this card's special summon effect. But the extra body can be the difference between getting interruption on your board or not. I think I demonstrated that pretty well in the example against Phantom Knights. So if you want to check out that video, by all means, feel free to do so. But this card is one of the most important cards to manage because it functions differently from just being like a consistency tool, like purely just a Rota type card, because it has like 2 other effects on it that makes it a lot more versatile, and that is really strong in a card. Next up, we got some power 1-ofs. Tenki for Fractal, of course, 1-for-1, which is a card that kind of isn't amazing all the time, but it is a 1-card play by itself, and it allows you to play going second just through certain board states. Foolish Burial to get you to either half of your engine if needed, just a super strong card. And then Call by the Grave, because we do want to deter our opponent's hand traps, and that is pretty much self-explanatory. So the next cards, I think these are all up for debate for sure. And I actually have like a second kind of sample list here where I I'm playing like Tactics in the main deck, and I'm just maxing out Droplet. And these hand traps obviously can just be whatever the format kind of demands at the time. But yeah, right now I'm currently on Crossout Designator. This is a card that I really don't like a lot, to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of this card, but I recognize that in a deck that loses pretty hard to things like Forbidden Droplet that a lot of people are maining right now, or just certain hand traps games 2 and 3, like Droll is debilitating. You do need ways to just guarantee that you can stop your opponent there, because like Triple Tactics talent is great at like kind of supplementing this, but by itself, like if you get Drolled and you like Tactics look your opponent's hand, unless their hand's already weak, like you're not going to be benefiting too much, whereas you really just need to play the game with Crossout Designator. And add to the fact that, if your opponent's citing like Dark Ruler or, even like Mystic Mine, if you want to play Mystic Mine for whatever reason, although that's not like super effective, but you can try, I guess. But yeah, there's a lot of go second cards. That's the main point here, that Tactics doesn't necessarily cover, unless like you already get hand trap beforehand. Like say your opponent only opens go second cards and they don't open hand trap, so like now Tactics isn't actually ripping anything from your opponent, and you're gonna lose to drop it regardless. So it's things like that which make me think that this card is kind of a necessary evil in this deck. I don't love it because it skews deck building and it messes up side patterns, especially when you're going first. But that being said, I think it's important to make sure that your combos resolve, which is why I'm currently on this card. Again, this is one of the things that could use potentially more testing. I'm not like completely sold one way or the other on it, but for now, this is the way that I am kind of leaning towards. The hand traps can really just be whatever the meta calls for at the time. DD Crow is an interesting thing because, of course, it is searchable. So, like I mentioned before, if you do have surplus names, there are times you can just like search a hand trap, and that's not too bad. Something in the upcoming format is like this is a decent answer to destroy Phoenix Enforcer, and that's like not really a bad thing at all. Decent in the Drytron matchup, and it depends on like what other decks make a resurgence or what decks make a comeback, but this could be a good enough hand trap to keep its spot, or you could just run hand traps that are just generally more effective and maybe lose out on a little bit more value of searching in favor of just maybe you search more follow-up instead, which is not bad either. Veil and Imperm are interesting cards in this or in like the context of Crossout, I should say. So you don't get hurt a ton by Veil or Imperm if they Imperm or Veil you at the wrong time, but if they save this for a better choke point, then you could be in trouble. Imperm especially, because what you're doing is you're going to be making Utopic Draco future, which doesn't really do anything to your Imperm or to their Imperm. So like this card in particular, I think you kind of need to be wary of. But yeah, it all depends on your opponent's knowledge of the deck. I really do think, and this is something I'll talk about in a later video that I might upload about like text to beat this deck and then ways to counteract those like side cards. But one of the best things you could do against this deck actually is to Veil or Imperm the Turquoise Orber special summon, and that hurts a lot because you don't really want to be normal summoning your Lyrilusc names because you're reserving those for a Tri-Brigade play, so you can actually make meaningful pushes towards like your boss monsters like Simorg or DDL or things like that. So if your opponent is like cognizant of the fact that Valor Imperm on Warbler is actually a really strong play, then you need to be able to do something to address that, because as I've been testing with my friends, I've been telling them, yeah, this is pretty much the choke point where if you have Valor Imperm, you want to be using it here, and then they do it on me, and I'm like, wow, this sucks. Like, this is really, really bad for the reasons I just kind of mentioned. So like your hand has to be exceptional to really just play past that, because the whole point of the Lyrilusc Engine, for the most part, at least turn 1, is to just spam the board without committing to your normal summon. And taking that away hurts like immensely. So yeah, that's why I have these in here still, because like smart opponents can still use these at opportune moments, even though again like Cobalt is theoretically great against these, because like you're getting so many searches and you can like insulate whatever you want off targeting protection. It really doesn't mean that these cards have no value. Not to mention the fact that there are hands where you just like open a Fractal, for instance, and then like obviously Valor Imperm are good there. So yeah, that's something to kind of think about. Ash on Bird Call is really, really good. Even if it's not the first card that you activate. If you're using this mid-combo, and one of the combos that I mentioned before was like, Warbler plus Wagtail being like a super, super strong one. And one of the reasons for that is that you can like search a Cobalt Sparrow off of your first Recital, and then because you're searching the Bird Call off the Wagtail, you're going to be like getting a search off Bird Call, and then you're using the secondary effect to summon out the Sparrow from hand, right? But if you Ash that there, for instance, it negates the entire effect, so you don't get the benefit of specialing, and you don't get your search either. So then you have like a bunch of stuff that's stranded in your hand, like where you maybe could have searched, say, like a Nerval instead, which again is why certain combos are riskier than others, and that's kind of things to talk about in the combo video, which will definitely be out if you are coming across this video at a later point in time. Be sure to check the channel for that. But anyways, yeah, so Ashen Bird Call, very, very strong. So like that's kind of another thing to want to maybe insulate for Crossout. Nibiru is an interesting one, because this deck actually has a pretty good time against Nibiru if you open up really, really well. And if you open up poorly, you often just, perform a combo that doesn't lose to Nibiru at all. So this is actually less in here for a Crossout target, and more in here just because I think it's a pretty decent hand trap overall. But this could change, right? Like you could definitely look at your like locals metagame, or like if you're preparing for a big event. Shout out to the fact that YC's Pasadena is announced as of today. So maybe you're planning for that event, and like you're seeing that, oh wow, everyone's suddenly maining Droll. Like maybe I need to actually main deck Droll myself to insulate against Crossout. If that's the case, definitely go for it. Right, so there's a lot of flexibility in these cards. That's like the TLDR version of it. So I'm not gonna like spend too much time on like these hand traps in the application of the metagame, because the metagame itself can change by the time you actually see this video, which is inevitable because the format is always evolving, right? But I just want to kind of get that out there in the sense that like you should know what hand traps stop you, like where your opponents are hand trapping you, like what hurts, what doesn't, like what you can play past, what ends your turn, and then kind of just play around with Crossout accordingly. Now, all that changes if you sort of just like not to play Crossout, because then you're just playing like the best hand traps for this spot and hoping that triple tactics does get you there, which is another potentially viable spot, or potential viable solution, I should say. So that is it for the entirety of the main deck, and we are already 28 minutes in. We are doing great. So now let's go ahead and move on into the extra deck. So it's 2 Recital Starling, 1 Ensemblue Robin, 1 Ensemble Nightingale for the Lyriluscs. So these are all like really, really good, and I did want to play Prom Thrush, which I guess is a card that I will bring up here. Penguins are the best deck. So Prom Thrush, which I think is renamed to Promenade Thrush, is the one that just outs back row, and it allows you to boost your Assembled Nightingale even further, at the start of the damage step, which is cool. This could maybe be a consideration, like if your locals, for example, is back row heavy, like you can consider this. There is, I think, one real like flex spot, like maybe 2 flex spots, but yeah, the extra deck's pretty tight here. But yeah, these are all like super, super strong as well. So this notably has a third effect that is important to keep in mind when you're going second, where all battle damage you take from battles involving the succeed summon card is also inflicted to your opponent. Very, very important, and notably this works even if you use your Assembled Nightingale to protect all your Lyrilusc monsters from being destroyed by battle or card effects, and also preventing you from taking battle damage, because even if you're not taking battle damage, you still do inflict the effect damage to your opponent. or actually it's all battle damage that is also inflicted to your opponent, but you get the point. So like this basically still works even though you're protecting yourself from damage from Nightingale. And there is a ruling for this, which I will put in the description if you want to look at kind of like a corollary with the new agent support that the OCG just got. Or you can watch the video against the Fam Knight matchup because I cover it there since this did actually come up. But yeah, when you're going second, it's important because sometimes you want to boost your opponent's monsters with the first effect, then just crash and just go for big damage. Super effective OTKs. Like you can still just play like a Lyrilusc OTK strategy going second, worst case scenario, which is like pretty decent. Especially if they're playing around like Lightning Storm and they put all their stuff in defense. Like that makes things like 20 times easier sometimes. Next up, we got Ensemblue Robin. This card is, of course, the non-once per turn compulsory, but this card is not, I don't think, as crazy as everyone's making it out to be, simply because it is vulnerable to the battle phase. And unless if you are specifically protecting it with something like, Double Dragon Lords or Rendezvous, for example, this card can be susceptible to the battle phase. And that is, again, another downside of the Barrel Canary, where if you were forced to Xyz summon early, or lock yourself into Xyz early, you don't actually get a lot of those added protective effects or ways to just make sure this sticks on board. So like you usually tend to have like 3 to 4 materials on this. Like 4 materials gives us 2,000 attack. Maybe you have a Barrel Canary under it. Usually you do, so it's like 22, and like that's fine. So you might be able to get some mileage out of like 1 or 2 bounces, but after that it will get cleared. So that's important. Notably, a lot of people like to point out that like this deck's good against Nibiru because of the fact that you can just Barrel Canary into the Ensemblue Robin afterward. But the fact of the matter is that it'll never be big enough to actually contest the Nibiru. So that's like one of the problems that pure Lyrilusc does run into, where in fact like you do get stopped on your way to like en route to Utopic Draco Future. You get Nibiru'd, and then your follow up is Barrel Canary, but like you're sticking an Ensemblue Robin that is going to just die to the battle phase. So that's something that you definitely have to be conscious of, and that's a strong argument to put Linkuriboh in the place of Almiraj here, because there's a lot of times where like say you open Barrel Canary plus Cobalt Sparrow, like you can like normal summon the Cobalt Sparrow, go into Linkuriboh, and then Barrel Canary bring out Sparrow, and then keep comboing because that lets you end on both the Utopic Draco Future plus the Ensemblue Robin. But the Ensemblue Robin would be fairly small, so you do want to be or rather ensure that this is going to be protected from battle, and that's the case where Linkuriboh definitely comes up. I'm still like back and forth between like Almiraj and Linkuriboh. I think both have come up for me, and it's unfortunate that I really don't want to play both. I think that the space is far too tight for that, but it's something to definitely think about. That small change can definitely cost you a game, so it's kind of like the risk if you want to take it. But this card's really good though. I kind of like mentioned a lot of negatives about this card, but I don't want to discount the fact that this card is extremely strong in the right matchups. Combined with the rest of your threats or your hand traps, your opponent essentially just can't commit to the board and really present anything that will threaten you for lethal. And then provided you have a good enough follow up in your hand, or you have something like some Morgan Field to get you there, this gets out of hand very fast. And again, it's like one of the situations where you can potentially even like bring it back with like a wagtail just randomly, or bring it back and then put a wagtail underneath it, I should say. Just randomly, maybe it could come up. That hasn't really come up for me, but in theory it could. So just something to think about. And then Assembled Nightingale. This really doesn't need any introduction if you have played against or with Drytron for any number of time. Pretty straightforward, but also keep in mind that this protects your Lyrilusc. So I mentioned ways to protect the Ensemblue Robin, which is things like Rendezvous, things like the Double Dragon Lords, Linkuriboh, etc. But this is another way to do so. If you can end on these two together, that effectively achieves the same purpose. And I think this is a lot easier to accomplish in like the pure Lyrilusc build, where you're willing to end on this because they often play multiple copies of it. But since we're only playing one, expending it turn 1 is a little bit risky. Not really, usually because like it's hard to out once you resolve its effect. But you do want to like overlay it and have a lot of materials on it later down the line for OTK potential. So a bit of a trade-off there, but again, this helps make Zeus. It's like lets you OTK, pretty self-explanatory. Next up, we have the Utopic Draco Future package, which is the way that you are able to give yourself Nibiru insurance, and just ways to provide additional pressure on your opponent, because this card allows you to steal your opponent's monsters too, which is great. So yeah, I don't think this needs too much explaining either. You will see if you're familiar with any of the combos that you go into this quite a lot, especially if you open Warbler plus like any of the strong extenders to go with it. Next up is the Zeus. I don't need to explain this at all. Next up is the Almiraj. So this comes up in situations, of course, where you open like just Nerval or just Kit, and like maybe a Tri-Beast with it to like pitch for Chaos and make something work. It's beneficial there, like, especially like if you open, even if you open like Nerval, because it gets itself out of the extra monster zone. So you can like put Simorg there, and that's relevant because a lot of the times in those weak hands you can only end on Simorg, so you really want the Barrier Statue to be like maximally protected. So that's like a strong case for it. There's also like a combo. I keep mentioning the Warbler Wagtail combo, but in this combo you do have your Kit on the board after you use its effect, and you do want to get in the grave to get your Rendezvous. You could technically send it with like the Dragon or DDL in that combo, but it's also a little bit greedy, so like you could, like, you often do just want to Almiraj there. This also does help, protect you a little bit from Lightning Storm, or just like random like destruction effects. Like if Fam Knights get more popular, this is a good card to have there, just like to help play around like Rusty or Breaksword. Things like that to keep in mind. So yeah, again, it's like between this and Linkuriboh, I wouldn't advise playing both just because the deck doesn't have a lot of like space for it. You can make space for it, but I really think that it's less valuable than just playing whatever other utility cards in here. Next up, you got the DDL. This honestly comes up a bit less than maybe it would have in previous builds, but it still comes up a fair bit, especially like in more simplified game states. Like if you are finding yourself in a grind, like this is one of the better cards to make later after like maybe they break your board with like Droplet or Dark Rule or something, and you like need a recovery play. This is one of the best ways to do that. So yeah, pretty good. Next up is 2 Farigit, and the second Farigit is, I think, the most ostensible fuck spot in this deck. 1 is definitely needed for sure, because you just require it for a lot of like certain combos, especially after you get Nibiru'd, because a lot of the times it involves going Shrike into Farigit, and then you want like the second Farigit later, just making sure that you get more value off your Lyrilusc names to just push your damage. But yeah, I think that the second Farigit has been the spot that has come up more for me than anything like I've tested like Rugal, I've tested Doom Eagle, I've tested Access Code, I've tested like the 3rd Recital, I've tested the Prom Thrush, I've tested the 2nd Assembled Nightingale, I've tested Sylvan Princess Sprite in this spot. Like I've tested a lot of things in this spot, and the Linkuriboh as well, of course. But I just think that this is the one that has given me the most consistent ways to play in spots where I find myself like, just with a lot of Tri-Brigade follow-up, or even Lyrilusc follow-up with Tri-Brigades, because like this bridges the 2 engines together extremely, extremely nicely. So yeah, I think that this is my pick personally. Of course, this can be any of the aforementioned cards, but yeah, it's this kind of stuff to keep in mind. Next up is Harpie Conductor. This is necessary for certain combos, namely, of course, the Fractal 1-card combo, but also just spots where you need to have a Winged Beast to go into Simorg, but you don't have spare Lyrilusc names to devote to that because you use them all on like your Recitals, for instance. Like that can come up. Simorg, this is like one of the reasons to play this version of the deck. You could theoretically play like Berry Bloom and Revolt in this deck. Like that's fair. But Bear Bloom conflicts with Barrow Canary because, or Bear Broom, because once you resolve this effect, you are locked in a special summoning out Tri-Brigade monsters for the rest of the turn. So for one, you can't like go this into Simorg and then go Statue at the end, because like if you trigger this, you get Revolt, but you're locked in a Tri-Brigades afterwards. So your end phase Simorg doesn't, end phase Simorg into Barrier Statue doesn't work. And then similarly with this and Barrow Canary, that's also a conflict because your Xyz locked with Barrow Canary. So you kind of have to choose which of these you value. And I feel like Barrow Canary is one of the best kind of just ways to keep going. And a lot of the Bear Bloom combos are ending on similar things to what pure Tri-Brigade's already doing. And I think one of the biggest advantages of this deck is the fact that you can play this crazy card that not only gets you to a Floodgate monster, but also gets you to lots and lots of follow-up. And again, if you just have Barrier Statue Simorg, like if your opponent can't stop you, you actually just win if you resolve the end phase Simorg on their turn. So I think that's like a really, really powerful reason to play this. Again, Revolt is a great card, obviously, and I think the biggest reason to consider Revolt is the fact that it helps play around Droplet Dark Ruler better. Just because, like, as it stands right now, your board is entirely vulnerable to that. Whereas like you can reserve Revolt and you can still get like a reasonable amount of mileage out of it, which is fair. But like you're never ending on like Revolt plus like Ensemblue Robin plus like Appaloosa with Utopic Draco Future. It's always going to be like just Utopic Draco Future plus Appaloosa and maybe double Dragon Lords if you open up really well. But like you also like it just doesn't seem super worth it when you can simply just play this in like pure Tri-Brigade, which I think does it more effectively than this deck does. So that's kind of my consensus on that. I still will be posting combos involving this card, just for those of you guys like who want to see it. But it's not a choice that I personally recommend. I did start off like at the very beginning testing with this and Revolt, but I quickly just switched back to the Simwork stuff because I found it to be a lot more seamless, and I think that it just ran a lot more smoothly for me. Next up is the Shrag. I would like to play 2 of this card, honestly, because again, there are a lot of cases where you just combo with this card in turn 1, particularly when you get hand trapped, or especially if you are running Tri-Brigade Oath in your side deck, you do want to have 2 of this because that's like a lot of how you manage to get to your Oath. Is that like this is like how you access the extra Tri-Brigade name. So yeah, 2 of that is something I've thought about playing, but space is really tight. Second Farid Jet came up before Second Try did in a lot of cases, so that is kind of my my verdict on that. And then finally, you have Appaloosa. This card comes up a fair amount for sure, especially like if you open a little bit awkwardly and you're trying to like play into a board going second. This can help kind of like help you stabilize the board before going for a Zeus push. So pretty good stuff there. So some cards to mention. Actually, I guess we'll do that at the end. Side deck. This is like you can feel free to even like largely ignore this. To be perfectly honest, this can very well change like in a week from now. But for now, I'm playing the 2 drill mostly as across a target. But like I would like to find a space for 3 because I think it's a pretty decent hand trap. Lancia because it can hurt. I'm still on the fence about this is even like that good because you can combo under Lancia if you open like the right combination of Lyrilusc names, but that being said, you're not ever going to be getting to Simorg. At least usually you're not getting to Simorg if you get Lancia. So that's why I still have it in here. Got back row wipes, Lightning Storm right now. Could be Twin Twister. I was testing Twin as well. Kind of just depends on how I'm feeling about the format. Droplet. There's a case to just main deck 3 of this, and a lot of people are doing that right now. So if you want to, go ahead. If you don't own this card like me, then that's rough because this card's really good. Something to know about Forbidden Droplet actually in this deck that I didn't mention is when you're going second and you're trying to pick apart a board, you can go like Warbler Chainlink 1. If they use an on-field effect to try and negate this, you can like chain Droplet, setting the card you're going to summon from hand. And this checks in resolution, so like you can Droplet, send for cost, and then bring back your monster from grave, which is really good. So like that's a neat little thing. Obviously this works well with the Nerval and the kit if you send those two. Yeah, just a neat little interaction I thought I'd bring up. Dark Ruler, cross the target here mostly, but this could also just, be worth maxing out on if the format gets there. 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent. This is a decent kind of like go for supplementary card to the Crossout Designator. I feel that like all you want to be doing in game 3 when you go first, or game 2 when you go first, if like you lose game 1, is just ensure that you are going to combo and that you make sure that you outweighs for your opponent to stop you or break your board. And like I think Tactics independently does less than Crossout independently in achieving that goal, but when you combine the 2 of them together, it's pretty crazy. This is also a decent go second card in the right matchup too. Next up is just Anti-Spell Imperial Order. Kind of similar logic where the biggest cards are like the board breaker type cards, and something to kind of mention going into like Grand Creators format, which isn't until January, but is something that's worth bringing up now because now we know Pasadena is going to be literally the weekend that Grand Creators drops. But something you want to keep in mind is that the Brave token stuff makes it that hand traps are less like potent, and so if that's the case, people might just play less hand traps and play like all go second cards, like all in on Droplet, Mystic Mine, Lightning Storm, Dark Ruler, like all in on these cards, and that's where these really can come in handy, and you might want to like bump this up to 3, for instance. And then maybe that's a time where Crossout would be less useful, like if you don't have to worry about the hand traps as much, and maybe you just want to like go towards this, and maybe I had Solemn Judgment in here for a while too, so maybe you could play that. So cards to think about. I talked a lot about Tri-Brigade Oaths, so I guess it's worth bringing up here. So that's it for the deck profile, by the way. So like if you want to leave now, go ahead. But this is like just stuff to think about and stuff that I've like tested in some capacity. So Tri-Brigade Oath is the first one I want to talk about. So this is one that was played back when this deck was like a lot more prominent, and like people were running this and Rendezvous and like the Bear Statue and even like Apex in the main, which I feel like is a lot of like one-ofs that you don't want to draw, like, a bit too much for my taste. But this card is basically a negation of a spell trap card if you control one each of the Tri-Beasts, and that is pretty easy to accomplish. Even in this current build where you're turboing out Utopic Draco feature, you can still get to it as long as you go ahead and like so like afterwards you like reserve your normal summon for your Tri-Brigade, so that's oftentimes kit. You can like kit into like your Shrike. You can go ahead and go into Farid. You can like Shrike search for your Karis, and then typically you'll have like your spare Winged Beast or whatever, like even it could be like a search off your second Recital, for instance. So that's how you can get to like your Karis into your double Dragon Lords, and like you can go into Simorg off of just like one more extender with like the Farid. So like that is pretty good. Like you can conceivably use this to like play around stuff like Droplet. It's just not reliable if they have hand traps plus go second cards, which is a tough part because when you're getting hand trapped, it is almost impossible for you to get to the like Oath consistently. So like not even get to Oath, but like just make it live, right? So that's like the problem with it. Whereas I'd rather just, even though it's in engine and it's a lot more accessible than a card like Anti-Spell Order, I'd rather just like play these cards instead personally. Another card to think about actually that I was running as well for a bit was Harpie's Featherstorm. This card is great. This card obviously is just Azathoth, which is like insane, but you can kind of approach the siding for going first in a number of ways. The first is like what I just mentioned, and that's just ensure that your combo resolves like at all costs basically, and just go all in on like just your go second card hate or like triple tactics talent to stop hand traps, or to play past hand traps either, or Crossout to stop hand traps. Or you can go the other route, which is like just side in Harpie's Featherstorm, and like even if point hand traps you, you can just Azathoth them for a turn and hope to play next turn. There's some like problems with that where like certain hand traps deplete you of resources, and that makes it harder for you to like reliably have follow-up to capitalize on the turn that this buys you, which is a little bit unfortunate at times, but that's something to definitely keep in mind. But that being said, I don't deny that this is a really strong card. I do not deny that. And then I think the final card that is worth discussing here is the Bird Sanctuary. So this card is a lot better, I think, in the pure build, because this can, if you draw it, it's kind of similar to like Sapphire, where it's like not the card you want to be drawing. I think the most useful card, or the useful thing about this card is the fact that when you go second, you are able to just like OTK a lot easier, because like you can just set these up like your Assemble Nightingale, Recital going second, and then you can just like boost this and then put all the materials under it, and it's like really easy OTKs. It's fine, I think. Again, I think it's better in like a centralized Lyrilusc build for sure. But here, I don't think it's like super needed. There's a lot of ways to OTK as is, because like the Tri-Brigades give enough power to where you can like easily access like heavy hitters like Shrike, for instance. I said this was gonna be the last thing, but I forgot about Apex Avion, which is pretty reasonable as a similar target. I was playing it in the initial video against Dragonlink. Definitely not bad, especially like if you are playing against like Flenderies. This could be maybe worth a side deck spot if you want to like beat that matchup in particular. Another thing to think about is Dark Simorg. This card is pretty good as well because it's great into backroom matchups, and then if you're playing Anti-Spell Fragrance, these pair very nicely, because even against the spell decks now, you just shut them off completely. I think usually the Anti-Spell by itself will be enough in a lot of those cases because you have such high OTK potential. So this would be primarily for the backroom decks, and so it's sort of just like what you expect to play against. I think the same can be kind of said for the Apex AVM. All right, so that is going to be it. I am just about losing my voice here. It's been near 50 minutes. I think this is the longest one of these deck profiles I've ever done, but you could tell I really have been, kind of just theorying this deck quite a lot, but I've been enjoying playing it. It's super, super fun. This is, again, kind of just phase one of heavy theory. And this can go under many different evolutions. So maybe this is the new deck that I'm picking up. Maybe this is the new face of the channel. So yeah, this is a super, super cool deck though. I really enjoy playing it. And that will be that. So again, stay tuned for the combo video. It will be coming out fairly soon. If you want it out faster, again, 150 likes would be the goal. If you made this far, just leave a smiley face at the end of your comment. I would say leave a hashtag something, but I disabled URLs, which incidentally I guess disables hashtags as well. So just leave a smiley face at the end of your comment if you made it to this far into the video, or you can just leave a smiley face by itself, just so I know that you made it all the way here. But yeah, that's gonna about wrap things up. So thanks guys again for watching the video. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Definitely do share as well if you like this content and you think that a friend of yours maybe can find it useful. I also talked a bit about ways to stop this deck, just not extensively, but I talked a little bit about that. So maybe if you want to send this to a friend who's trying to learn how to beat the deck, that could be useful as well. I'm trying to pick up the channel again. I took some numbers of breaks, which did not do very well in terms of the algorithm, which is my own fault, of course, but I would be highly appreciative if you guys helped me kind of get back up off the ground again here, because I do plan on uploading, especially now that we know real life events are coming back. That's really exciting. I think the new format is super enticing. I'm super just excited to play Yu-Gi-Oh again, I guess. So if you guys could help me out in that respect, that would be great. That's the best way to support the channel, is just like the video, watch, comment, share, do all the good stuff. I'm rambling on way too much though. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. So thanks guys for watching again, and until next time, I will catch you in the next video. See you guys.